Pirkei Mishna Gimel. Asara nisyainus nisnasa Avram Avinu alav shalom v'amar b'kulam. Avram Avinu was tested. He had the great test, 10 nisyainus, and he withstood all of those nisyainus, all of those trials and tribulations. That shows, that demonstrates the great love Rabbi Shalom has for Avram Avinu. He withstood these 10 nisyainus. In the list of what those 10 nisyainus are, there's different opinions, and the Meforshim and the Rishonim have different opinions of what they were. But none of them list the nisyan of the Misa of Sari Imenu. They list the Kvura of Sari Imenu, but not the actual Misa, which seems to be a pellet. Here, Avram Avinu, he withstood the supreme test, the supreme nisyan, Akedas Yitzchak. He was willing to sacrifice, happily, willingly sacrifice his son for a korban to the Rebbeinu Shalom. His ben Yachid from Sari Imenu, his Yairish. And he returns home after this great nisyan to find that Sari Imenu, Parchan Nishmasa, she heard about the Akedah, she heard about the danger that Yitzchak was in, the Akedah, Parchas Nishmasa, she died suddenly, and now he was left without his Ezer Kenegdai, without Sari Imenu. In our understanding of events in the world today, this would be considered a tragedy. It would be considered a terrible tragedy. There's a difference of opinion, and the Or Chaim brings it down as if really this was the time for Sari Imenu's Petira. These were just the circumstances that brought it about, but this really was the time that she was meant to be taken from this world. Or if it really wasn't, she was meant to live longer, but she died suddenly, which would term to be a tragedy. After withstanding this supreme test, to come home and find that Sari Imenu was gone, and yet nobody lists this as one of the nisyainus of Avram Avinu. No one counts this as one of the nisyainus. Why? Why is this not one of the nisyainus? Why is the nisyan of Lech Lecha a greater nisyan than this? Why is the nisyan of Vayira Ba'aretz? Why is this not considered a nisyan? And perhaps the pshat is, when we talk about the nisyainus of Avram Avinu, we're not simply talking about difficulties. We're not talking about Yisurin. Many tzaddikim, many people in the world undergo Yisurin, and Rahman al-Islam, there's tragedies, and they have difficulties, and they have to contend with all types of tragic events. And Rahman al-Islam, they have to contend with Petiras and Yisurin and Machlas, Rahman al-Islam. But when we talk about the nisyainus, the supreme test of Avram Avinu, we're talking about something different. We're not talking about the trials and tribulations of everyday life. We're talking about nisyainus where Avram Avinu had to change his whole character, had to bend his whole nature. He had to undergo a transformation of character in order to carry out the will of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Whatever his natural tendencies were, he had to fight that. He had to transform himself to become something different, somebody different, in order to be the Eved Hashem, the person that the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted him to be at that time. The Akedah was a supreme test, not only because it meant sacrificing his ben Yachid from Sari Imenu, Yitzchak Avinu, the child, the son that he davened for, B'chol lev v'nefesh, the Yairish of Avram Avinu. Not only because of that, but also because Avram Avinu had to become a different person. He had to fight his whole nature, his natural inclinations, his tendencies. Avram Avinu was Isha Chesed. He was the epitome of Chesed, of kindness, and now here he is asked to shecht his son, to slaughter his son, the opposite of Chesed. And Avram Avinu is asked to do that, and he does it happily and gladly. That is an Nisayan. The Nisayan to be, you are an Ish Chesed, now be what is considered to be an Ish Achzori, to do something like that. Avram Avinu was the first in the world to introduce monotheism, the belief in the Rabbeinu Shalom. He introduced belief in the Rabbeinu to the world, and to fight against the practices, the grotesque practices of the Oivdei Avodah Zorah, who would do such Dvorim Achzorim, grotesque actions such as sacrificing their children to their gods. And now here Avram Avinu is asked to make a mockery of his whole life. The very thing that he was fighting against, the Ish Emunah, the Ish Emes. Now he is being asked to make a mockery of his life. He is being asked to take his Ben Yochid, to take his beloved Yitzchak and sacrifice him on the Mizbeach for the Rebbeinu Shalom. He's being asked to take his whole nature, his whole life, and overturn it and throw it away for the Rebbeinu. And he does it gladly, happily, b'leiv sholem. That's an Nisayan. That's an Nisayan. The regular trials and tribulations of life, how difficult they may be, and Rahman al-Islam, we should be all spared from them, but that's not when we refer to the Nisyanis of Avram Avinu. We refer to the Nisyanis to combat his very nature, his very being, his whole essence, to turn his whole essence into Avodas Hashem. And there is nothing else that exists. It's all Avodas Hashem. And there is no more natural inclination. That's the Nisayan of Avinu. And Omid B'Kulan. Those are the nisyanos that tzaddikim undergo regularly. They have to turn their nature inside out, to be something different, to be different people, to recreate themselves, to be Oved Hashem for what the moment calls, for when Hashem calls. I remember many years ago, I went to visit Rav Shach Zatzal. I had several issues to discuss with him regarding some of the chinuch in Eretz Yisrael and some of the meises in Eretz Yisrael. And it was a quiet Sunday afternoon. It was not a Kabbalah's Kahal. It was a very quiet Sunday afternoon, and the Gaboim, they led me into his study, where he was learning there. There was nobody there. And he was learning in the Gemara, and he was totally unaware of my presence. And he was learning with such a simcha, and with such a radiance, and such a smile, such a pure, innocent, tmimistic smile on his face, and so gentle. And he was looking into the Gemara and learning, and then he was turning to the back, turning to the Rosh, and he was looking to the Rosh at the back with the greatest simcha, and looking carefully into the Korban Nisanel on the bottom, totally immersed and engrossed in his learning. Mole simcha, so peaceful, so serene, so calm. Finally he looked up and he saw that I was there. So he interrupted his learning, and we started discussing things, and there was issues of the day, and there was an issue of the day that he had to take a stand on, and suddenly he became very forceful and very strong and very stark, and it seemed like it was a totally different person. Rav Shach, when he was in his learning, his natural inclination with the sweetness and the tmimistic, the radiance of the learning, the purity, the serenity, but when he had to take an issue on Tzorchei Tzibur, Covered of the Rebbeinu Shalom. He was a lion, roaring, stark, pounding on the table. Tzaddikim, their nature is many times, all the time, dictated by the Ratzon of the Rebbeinu.